As always, it's wonderful to see you all. I'm grateful that you are here. We just finished a retreat with some people from Switzerland, and I thought I'd say a few words about one of the questions that came up during that retreat. The question was very simply, how do you deal with ego in the practice as you go forward and try to grow spiritually? Well, there's a certain sense that the ego needs to be killed or, is a very bad thing, etc. But that's not really the case at all. We don't need to think of it like that. The image of being a captain or commander of your own inner state, in the sense of controlling where your attention is. And that is, I think, the most important thing about dealing with your ego. There's nothing wrong with your ego. Everybody has one. Everybody needs one. But nobody needs to be a slave to it. So the main thing, is that we have it within ourselves to be able to let go of the ego. First maybe we can agree on what is ego. But for our purposes of really dealing with movement more and more into the deeper self that we are at the core, we just need to understand that the ego, in a way, is a lower self. It is mostly concerned with short-term results. The ego was developed over time, mostly through adversity. As we were growing up and as we were adjusting to our environment, our ego was basically formed by the fact that we had to create some patterns of reaction that would help us in the short run. But what happens, for most people is that it gets kind of overdeveloped, and so then we get the fight or flight syndrome, and we get the whole thing of, something triggers us, and we have this tremendous anger, and we express it in a way that turns right back on us and makes our long-term situation very difficult and doesn't really serve us. So to distinguish between this lower self, which is the ego, and the higher self or the deeper self, which is the self with a capital S, the core of our being, our simple state of being. Now there, we are concerned with long-term, all the way to the infinite and eternal. That's what we are concerned about. We want to free ourselves from the need to be controlled by this short-term survival mechanism in us, which is, of course, highly human, but doesn't make it necessarily spiritual. Spiritual means that you are able to shift your attention into a kind of witness consciousness and intently asking yourself to connect with what are my deepest goals and how do I free myself from being on automatic according to all these habits and needs that I have in a short-term sense. So this is, in a way, extremely challenging, but it's also extremely simple. It's just a matter of doing it. When you feel yourself getting riled up or pressed down, whichever kind of reaction it is, either you get depressed because you are in a situation that bothers you a lot, or you get mad, angry because it reminds you of some wrong that was done to you, or you're in a situation where actually, there is a short-term threat. Remind yourself that you are the commander. You are responsible for where your attention is. If your attention is on the problem, day in and day out, well, you're hurting yourself, nobody else. So how can we shift from that? Well, the basic tools that we have and some of the more advanced tools will do it. But, just to be in yourself and opening to this state of inner space and embracing in that space whatever particular challenge you are facing. If it comes from a trauma or some difficult conditioning, just by keeping yourself open long enough, deeply enough, that will gradually dissolve. You have to face it, embrace it, and let it go. And then it gets tired of bothering you.